Hello, creative freelancers and solopreneurs. Welcome to the 100th episode. Yay! This is the Tuesday 2 o'clock Tea and Talk. I am Aura McKay. I'm the founder of Business of Creativity. And today I'd like to take the opportunity to help you guys get to know who I am and a little bit more about why I do what I do in the world, and to share with you a little bit about my own personal journey as a creative entrepreneur. I'd love for this to be interactive. So even if you are watching this on the replay, woo woo! Hi Jamie, hey Brian. Even if you are watching this on the replay, I'm going to give you some opportunities to interact and to share with me and the rest of those who are present for this conversation just a little bit about your experience and knowing me as I have walked this path. So I'm going to start off way back in the beginning of time and just give you guys a sense of like, where did this come from? Like, how did the world end up with Aura McKay as she is now? And my whole life, I have been surrounded by and encouraged to be self-expressed. My parents are both artists in their own ways, and my dad is a woodworker. My mother, by grace, is a painter. My mother is an actor and a singer. So I have been surrounded by the examples, the living examples of creatives engaged in self-expression. And that motivation, that idea that anything was possible, and that each of us is bestowed with an extraordinary gift in the world is something that I've carried with me for forever, even in my times of imposter syndrome and self-doubt and all of the rest of it. Hey Anna, hey Katie, yay! It's like a party. We're having 100th episode party. And what I'm noticing is that the people that are showing up live on this broadcast are coming from very different areas of where did you know me and how do you know me. So that core in my heart of self-expression as being modeled, as being desirable, as being something that you could actually do in exchange for money as a living was instilled at a very, very young age. The counterpart to that is that, yes, I had all of this creative self-expression being modeled, but I also had a lot of instability. We moved around a lot. We moved in a lot of different places, a lot of different circles, a lot of different models of here is a family dynamic. And I say that because I'm a child of the 60s generation, and my parents were interested in exploring different family dynamics of co-parenting and living in communal houses. And so there was this wide open area of possibility that anything is possible and that we can create our lives however we can imagine them. That this was this is still a huge foundation of who I am in the world. Not just the idea of law of attraction or being able to manifest, but that circumstances happen around us, and it is largely our interpretation of those circumstances that give it meaning and impact and importance. So I have been trained from an early age that we create our own reality, that we create what we see and experience around ourselves in as much as that we create how we feel about it. So there's been a big kind of weight on my shoulders for a long time, this kind of burden of, if anything is possible, then you, Aura, you better get out there and do something extraordinary. So I've carried around the idea that there's an obligation to be extraordinary. And so as I look back on my own journey as a creative entrepreneur, as I look back on my journey in any of my career paths, you can see that there's this drive for excellence and quality, and that it's sort of driven from this piece of how can I almost not just prove myself, but how can I get to that level of excellence and extraordinary in my life? And that kind of drive has been both a blessing as a creative entrepreneur and has been a real challenge as a creative entrepreneur. Creativity, gang, I'm sure you know this, that it can be messy and chaotic and disruptive, and it's not always linear and perfect and set up in a nice little package. In fact, it's often not that, at least in the process of it. And how that kind of drive to be extraordinary in the context of anything is possible and self-expression is encouraged, how that showed up in my life and in my career was I became an accountant. Yep. I know, right? Makes total sense. You've got this environment of creativity and self-expression and possibility, and you can do anything and be anything, and shouldn't it be extraordinary? And I choose accounting, which is absolutely was one of the best choices that I could make. I got a real sense of the foundation of business. I got to understand the system and structure of how business is run, and that those sort of the framework, the engineering behind businesses. And it was a huge, huge blessing to me to be exposed to that industry, to learn all of the nitty-gritty around financial management, to be in school, to actually have that school paid for. So part of this whole blessing of manifestation is I've had a lot of experiences in my life that are truly extraordinary, and in some cases kind of unbelievable of what has kind of manifested or can't come into my life. Now, in my current work, I do speak on mindset, and I do speak to the element of circumstances and interpretation and how those two interact. But I focus on helping creatives translate the business part into something that makes sense for them. And so where did that come from? Well, I think it came from noticing over and over and over again what my immediate circle of friends was getting right up against in terms of their challenge, and from a deep heartfelt desire to help them and to help myself. So there we are. We like timeline here, graduated from high school, top of my class, honors student, skipped a year, super duper smarty pants, overachiever. And you can see that an environment of possibility and openness and self-expression and freedom actually drove me to look for structure and framework and rigidity. I think we all rebel against our parents to some extent, and my parents being self-expressed artists was what caused me to possibly go into financial management and accounting. And from then, I traveled the world. So I went traveling in the early 90s after being in accounting for several years, and I traveled in the South Pacific and Southeast Asia for 18 months. Originally, it was like one of these go and find yourself and learn who you are and explore the world, and kind of the whole gap year idea. But for me, a couple of things happened when I was traveling. The first thing I noticed is that even though I was in a completely different space, so, one day I'm in East Vancouver and I'm packing up my brand new little 55-liter backpack and putting on my totally brand new Tilly hat and my brand new hiking boots, and crying over the fact that I'm going to have to pack up my toothbrush every night and it's not just going to be there. And in the next minute, I am in a 25-foot canoe that's leaking bad enough that 3 small boys have been hired to bail it out as we canoe from Fiji, from a very tiny little island to a tinier island in the dark without a generator. And literally, less than 48 hours difference to completely change my entire environment, my entire experience, and the anchor point and context from how I was seeing myself. And what I noticed was that I was still the same me in Fiji as I was 2 days ago in East Vancouver. And that changing where I physically was in the world didn't actually turn me automatically into this brand new person with like brand new clarity and brand new ideas and brand new confidence. I got kind of a wake-up call almost immediately that if the purpose of this trip was transformation, that I was going to have to do the work. And traveling in the South Pacific and Southeast Asia was extraordinary in so many ways. And you know, one of the ways that kind of has led me on the journey of creative entrepreneurship was being faced with a wide open itinerary. So I knew for sure I was going to go Vancouver to Vancouver, Fiji, Cook Islands, and then to New Zealand, and then Australia. But I didn't really know where I was going to go from Australia. I thought maybe Greece or into Europe. And I had this kind of wide open palette of possibilities. I know, such an amazing adventure. Jamie, I can't even tell you. I think back on it, and that was what, 26 years ago that I went on that adventure. This was before the internet, before cell phones, before even really email. I was communicating through written messages, post restante at different post offices. The routine is show up in Kathmandu, figure out where you're going to sleep in a hostel, and then figure out where the closest post restante is and go and see if anybody sent you any mail. It was an absolutely extraordinary adventure. I did so many of my bucket dreams on that adventure. You know, I went up on top of the glaciers in Franz Josef Glacier in New Zealand. I went sliding down ice tunnels on top of the glacier. I whitewater rafted over a 21-foot waterfall. I went into the glowworms and went spelunking. I saw so many extraordinary things. I went fishing for barramundi in a shark-infested river. Just incredible adventures. Is, you know, scuba diving on the Great Barrier Reef. I did every single thing I wanted to do, and I was faced with, almost on a daily basis, this wide open palette of possibility that I could do anything with my day. I could go anywhere, I could eat anything, I could see anything, I could go spelunking. Yes, spelunking in a glowworm cave, Anna. Yep. I don't usually put it on my resume, but super fun. So that idea of wide open possibilities of, do I go to the glowworm caves, or do I go on an outback bicycling adventure? Do I go bungee jumping off a bridge, or do I take a helicopter up to the top of a glacier? I had opportunity and choice surrounding me with abundance. And this is what happened. I almost got paralyzed with there was too many options. There was too many possibilities. There were too many opportunities. And I didn't have a framework or a rubric or anything to be able to evaluate which one is the best option. Do I go from Australia to Indonesia? Do I go from Australia to Greece? Do I stay in Australia for 6 months or 3 months? What do I actually do here? And I recognized that a lot of my life, I had been living it according to a timeline or an agenda, or in terms of the constraints about what was possible. And so once I changed my environment and I just did away with all of the constraints that were on me, and I had wide open possibility, I kind of lost my way a little bit. It wasn't the kind of freedom that I thought it was going to be. In fact, it was pretty restrictive, in the sense that I didn't really have any indicator of which way to go. And sometimes I still have that experience in my solopreneurship, where, you know, when I look out at the world and what's available to us, and even right now in the climate of uncertainty means more possibility. Uncertainty means that there's going to be innovation and ideas. Uncertainty means that there's opportunity. And so I still look at all that opportunity and go, well, which one do I pick? Which one is the right one? And so, yes, freedom in excess can be overwhelming. And so this was kind of where the seeds of the idea of having a framework or having a damn plan, having those edges or those kind of the kind of touchstones that we can say, okay, I know I have wide open possibilities. Anything can happen. But I also know that these are the core things that I truly care about. So traveling was awesome. I did travel for just about 18 months, came back, and that's when I thought I need to do something more creative than accounting. I had taken a camera with me, and at that time it was still film. So I had a little point and shoot camera, and I could lock the focus so I could kind of control my compositions a little bit, and I could either force the flash or suppress the flash, and that was it. And I took 52 rolls of film over the course of 18 months. And you guys, I was so paranoid about the whole thing that when I was traveling, I actually would like go to, in Thailand or Bangkok or Kathmandu, I would go and I would get the roll of film developed at a local lab, and I would send the negatives home by post to my mom. And then when she said that she got the negatives, then I would send the actual prints home. And so I would always have like kind of 2 copies just in case, because I really wanted those memories. I really wanted those photos. And when I came back, I decided, I thought, well, that's it. I found my calling. I am going to be the next National Geographic photographer. Look out, world. Here I come. Nothing's stopping me now. And then I looked, and then I really looked at what would it actually look like to be a National Geographic photographer in 1995. What did that actually mean in terms of what would my lifestyle be? What would the actual doing of the work look like? Instead of the fantasy of it, I wanted to do a reality check, and I wanted to look at what does that look in terms of my lifestyle and the kind of business that I would be running. And what I learned about that at that point, even though I wasn't kind of thinking about the business, was that the lifestyle of a National Geographic photographer did not really suit me. And at that time, I had the wrong gender to be the National Geographic photographer. They just weren't women at that time. And so I kind of was like, okay, but I still want to do something more creative than accounting. And that's what put me into marketing and advertising. So for the next little while, whoa, that's a weird highlight. So for the next little while, let's just see if we can't, there we go. I ended up studying marketing communications. And I went to school, I worked for a great firm. I did 200 hours of overtime in about 6 months. I completely burnt myself out. It was not the creative outlet that I was looking for, even though I have a huge background in marketing communications and have finished my diploma and everything. It's not my voice to be just doing media buys and managing accounts. Unless I'm in that creative space, it just wasn't enough. So from that, I finally found my voice and my courage to jump into photography. And it kind of happened through manifestation, through law of attraction, through designing and dreaming into being what that life could look like. Thank you, Anna. I always give 110%. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, at some points in my life, I have, it's been shared with me that when somebody says, okay, everybody, 100%, that I should probably go at about 85, and I might fit in with the crowd a little bit. But my having a place where my 110% really resonates has been one of the themes that I have been working with my whole life about how do I find where I fit in? How do I find where I belong? But more than that, how do I find when who I am at my core of my enthusiastic, energetic, 110%, ask a million questions, laser listening, super decisive, firm, but so caring. Where does all of that fit? And it didn't fit in an accounting office, and it didn't fit in the marketing communications office. And so I looked at photography, and by sharing my love and passion for photography, I had an opportunity to be one of the first people to use digital technology for commercial purposes. I got hired for photographing 360-degree virtual reality tour pictures for hotels and vacation destinations in the early 2000s, one of the first Nikon 995 cameras. You know those ones that kind of look like a VCR or a videotape, and you kind of like twisted them? So I had an opportunity through visualization, through manifestation, through talking about it, through creating my own future, to get hired to do this work. And I got shipped off having never used an SLR camera. So just to be clear, I have a 20-year career as an international award-winning professional photographer. And it started before I had ever held a camera, a real camera. I got paid to be a photographer, which can show you how powerful having a clear vision, having confidence in your skills and ability. I did not oversell myself, gang. I told them exactly what I had done, that I had traveled for 18 months, that I had taken a lot of photos. I showed them a portfolio of about 15 of those images, and they hired me based on not necessarily my photography skill, because I really didn't have any at that point, but based on all of the other skills that I was bringing to the equation. So sometimes, we think that people are hiring us because of our creative skill, and it's kind of a given unless they're going to train us, which is what they ended up doing. Most of the time, people are hiring us for a completely different reason. So, moving along in the whole story, after working for VRX Studios for for a couple of years, it was just too chaotic for me, and I decided I needed to go back to school. Back to school I went, and so for the last 20 years, after learning film photography and working with the big 4x5 cameras with the hood over and all of that kind of stuff, and again, the requirement was 1 portfolio to graduate. I did 7 print portfolios, and I got an A on each of those print portfolios. When Anna says that I'm giving 110%, my commitment to my word and to delivering quality is unstoppable. It's not negotiable. I am absolutely committed to excellence in everything that I do. And it does harm me sometimes. I have done a lot of work to see that excellence does not have to be perfection, that excellence can come in many, many forms. So, work in progress. Awesome. So, graduated, top of my class, super duper fun. Let's go do it. Let's be a photographer. And here's the deal, gang. When I graduated from photography, even with all of my other past experience, I didn't want to run a business. I just wanted to do what I love and get paid. I didn't want to have to figure out the marketing and the sales and the business structure. I just wanted someone to hire me as a photographer. And there weren't a lot of options in the early 2000s. There just weren't. There aren't now. Jobs, Jobs, as photographers, there's going to be pretty low. Perfectionist Anonymous, there is a book called Addiction to Perfection, which was one of the things that did help me shift it a lot, Jamie. So if you might be suffering or anonymously joining that group, Addiction to Perfection was a great book for me to look at that piece. So many of the people that I speak to now in my work are at the same place. They're super awesome at their skills. In photography school, we were taught so many great skills, and I'm incredibly grateful to have learned traditional film photography and to have been in a darkroom and to have learned about how photography came and the history of it and all of those pieces. But in an entire year's program, we had, I think, maybe 30 hours, maybe 10 classes, 10 3-hour classes on business. That's it. So most creatives I've met are in that same boat where we've been really supported and very trained in our creative self-expression, but we haven't had that same level of support and training and resources in the kind of business and marketing skills that are going to support us. So for a while, I just kind of surfed on that whole wing it window, that time when we're like new to our creative passion, and our energy and our enthusiasm and our naivety can go a long way to attracting clients, and we can leverage all of those immediate relationships that we have to be able to get work for a while. But eventually that wing it window dries up, and that's when I really started to embrace business. And it was right around 2008, again, where I had to look at what is the business plan I have, and how can I set myself up to be more flexible and resilient in the future if there happens to be economic downturn, because 2008 was a killer year for our economy, and many businesses weren't. They went out of business. I mean, lots of my own income dropped by 80% in 1 year. And so that was the year that I got really clear that having a framework or having a plan was critical to being long-term sustainable and long-term profitability. I love photography. It is a huge source of joy and self-expression, and I love the images that I've created and the community that I've built. And I'd love, if you're here, if you're still here, thank you. And I'd love to know, those of you that are listening, did you meet me first as a photographer, a friend, or a business coach? Because my ideal dream life for many years was not pure photography. I really wanted to have some stability that I was missing from my background of creative self-expression, but no continuity, no stability, no framework. And so I thought that for me, what would work great would be to be a photography teacher and a photographer, to be an instructor and to have that core kind of anchor job, that ability to give back, the ability to be at the front of the room and be the expert, to inspire and uplift other people. Awesome. So Anna, photographer, Jamie Den, photographer. It was through Professional Photographers of Canada. I retired my business, my main business, about 5.5 years ago now, Jamie. So in the mid 2000s, I connected with Mark Kugel and Six Langman, and the three of us were instrumental in doing all of the curriculum design for the current program at Vancouver Institute of Media Arts. So Van Arts has a full-time professional photography program, and it was Mark Kugel, Six Langman, and myself who were the core three people who made that happen in the beginning of time. And we were also building up Vancouver photo workshops and part of the 104 collective. So that period of between like about 2006 to about 2014, those 8 years were like the peak years. They were like the Andy Warhol kind of years of my creative, just working with other creatives and doing fun shoots and having meaningful, deep conversations about art and photography and gonna change the world through it, and exploring my nude and figure work and some of my more sort of edgy work that I was doing, and finding my own voice and figuring out my own creative self-expression during that time. And so much of my life, gang, has been about pausing to do inner reflection and then doing the work for outside manifestation. And what I've noticed so much in hanging out with other creatives and seeing creatives evolve over time is that we all want that balance between, who are we as photographers, as creators, as videographers and graphic designers, who are we, and how does that self-expression get manifested out in the world? And for many being able to have our creative craft as our hobby, as our self-expression, that's totally enough. For some, we're driven to find ways to serve others in our community and to use our creative voice to support and to make a difference out there in the world. And for some of us, we're looking at our creative skills as a way to leverage income. Whatever our perspective, I'm sure I have walked all of those different perspectives at some point in my life. And what happened maybe about 7 or 8 years ago is I was starting to see in all of the classes that I was teaching and conversations that I was having that there was a lot of people who were struggling. And certainly in my work with Van Arts and Vancouver Photo Workshops, I was able to help kind of little pockets of groups get better not only at their craft, but I started teaching the business aspect of photography. I started teaching organizational and systems aspects. And I started to see how hungry creatives are for the kind of business and marketing support that they can actually use. When I started teaching the business of photography and the business of creativity, it was so focused on outdated 20th century business models, 20th century thinking. It was all very fixed plans that just wouldn't respond to the dynamic, flexible nature and the element of manifestation that I believe that we can bring to any conversation. So gang, I just got the low power mode button on my phone. So clearly I have been talking for a very long time. Hey Luke, welcome. I really appreciate you listening to this story, sharing it in this manner all at once. I probably could have condensed a few of them, but it has been a long journey. I'm 50 years old. I've been an entrepreneur for, I'm going to say 22 years, about 22 years. For the first part of my life, I was a corporate kid. I followed the straight and narrow. I went down the accounting path. And in all of my jobs and all of the places, giving 110%, having integrity with my word, and trying to find a way to connect to joy has been a huge, huge part of all of my journey. And so here I am now, where I have been doing business and marketing coaching for creatives for the last 6 years or so. And I decided that business of creativity was going to give me the opportunity to support people on a bigger scale, to have a bigger platform, to serve more people in a more meaningful way so that creative entrepreneurs can thrive, so that we as humanity can benefit from their creativity, ideas, and innovation, and so that more and more people get to have their self-expression generate income for them, and that they can make a life and have a living doing work that they love. That was the dream, right? Do work you love and the money will come. Well, there's a few other pieces, and I wanted to fill in those missing pieces and help others bridge that gap. That kind of brings us up to date for now. And when you look at how I've designed my business, how I've designed my programs, how I've designed my life, you can see the threads of my whole life coming through that in the terms of there is diversity in what I do. I have some elements of creative expression where I'm creating programs and creating content. I have some elements of creative self-expression where I'm here performing for you guys in front of a camera, which I absolutely love. I have all those elements of self-expression. I have the ability to create the systems and structure that I love so much. And I get to serve people on a very deep level and make a huge, huge impact for them in their world. So that's how I got here. That's one of the reasons why I've been committed to 100 episodes. Woot! 100 episodes of the Tuesday 2 o'clock Tea and Talk. I am announcing today that I am rebranding this program. It will still be on Tuesdays. It will still be at 2 o'clock, but I'm shifting the name to Coaching for Creatives. So Coaching for Creatives as a promise is going to be a lot more accurate as to the kind of content that you're going to see. Business and marketing coaching, mindset coaching, same kind of content, but just a little bit more focused on really wanting to serve and support my community of creatives lives with some great coaching. So gang, that's me. Anybody have any questions, anything that they're curious about? Spelunking in the glow room caves in New Zealand, full-on wetsuit and a inner tube, and then you had the little light on your head, and we went down into the cave, and it was a water-filled cave, so we could like hang on to the inner tube and essentially float down. And then you get into one chamber, and then we all turn off our headlamps, and that's when you see the glowworms. And it's like being like inside a planetarium, or you know, out in a field looking at the stars in a universe in a completely like no light pollution night. It was extraordinary. Things like rafting over the 7-meter waterfall, that was a huge adventure. I was so freaked out about falling out of the boat that I let go of everything else, and I just hung onto the boat, and everybody else fell out of the boat except for me and the guide. And I was holding on for dear life by the time we got to the end of that journey. That was quite something. I mean, so many different experiences in life that still inform me today, still inform how I interact with people. I mean, some of the best experiences have been in the conversations and the relationships that I've built. Interestingly enough, in the last 6 or 7 years, every single time I've traveled, it has rained. And I mean it like rained. Like I was in Paris for 5 days, and it flooded the Seine River, and it rained every single day. I was in New York City, and I was landing in New York, and there had been a hurricane warning in New Jersey and flash flooding in Manhattan. I went to Mexico in the middle of summer, in the middle of the desert in San Miguel de Allende, and yep, it rained in San Miguel de Allende in August. It's extraordinary how much rain there really has been in the last 7 years traveling together. I went to India in May, and it was so hot and so humid that it may as well have been raining. And in fact, it did rain every single day. Luke says, please don't come to Quebec unless you guys are having forest fires, and then I should absolutely visit Quebec. I keep telling people that I should be doing an Okanagan wine tour during fire season, because that would probably save us all a bunch of money in firefighting fees. Yeah, it's probably good that I live over here in the rainforest. The adventures that we have, gang, I believe, inform how we perceive and interact with the world. And I, for one, am so grateful for the people that I have met and the experiences that I've had. Many people say, you know, what's your favorite place? Where would you go back to? And so much of my experience of a particular place or location on the planet was dependent on who I was being when I was there and who I connected with while I was there. So, and what I'm discovering is that who I am in the world is constantly evolving, but there are some continuous threads of my core values and what really is important to me. And one of my core values is stability, and my other core value is freedom, which has blessed me with the kind of insight that I need to be a creative entrepreneur, to have that stability of having a framework around business, and then have the freedom for autonomy on my schedule, creative self-expression, and really showing up in the world however it is that I truly am, and finding a place for that in the marketplace. So, any other questions before I head off? This has been the longest Tuesday 2 o'clock tea and talk ever. Luke has invited me to Quebec during the winter, absolutely, because frozen rain is snow, and that can be so much more fun than actual rain. I'd love to be doing some traveling soon. We'll see how that goes in the world. One of the reasons why I've created my life the way that I have is so that I can travel, so that I can have a laptop lifestyle, so that I can have autonomy over my schedule and be able to take the rest of the afternoon off and go and walk in the sunshine. Thank you again. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate having an audience to share this journey with. I'm glad that you find them entertaining. I try to cut all the stories in like one telling. And I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more about who I am in the world in the upcoming Coaching for Creatives at Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. All right, thanks guys. Have a great day. Appreciate you. Stay safe, stay awesome, stay creative.